All right. The San Diego housing market is about to go crazy over the course of 2022. I mean, really, if you've been paying attention, it's already really tough out there, especially for buyers. But there are some major changes coming into effect this year that are going to have an effect on what's going to be happening with the amount of buyers and the amount of sellers out there. So that's exactly what we're talking about today. And to answer your questions about real estate, about mortgage, all those different types of things. So my name is Dan Parker. I'm a real estate agent here in San Diego, if you don't know me. And this channel is all about living your best life in San Diego, which has to do with buying and selling homes, everything coming soon, exploring different parts of the neighborhood. And I am joined today by my good friend, Danny Drysdale with Intercap Lending. So you're the branch manager. You have the Drysdale team. You've been doing this for a long time. You're the most knowledgeable guy that I know, and I've worked with you a ton in the past when it comes to mortgages. So I'm really excited to have you on today, man.
Wow, thank you. Those are big shoes to fill, man. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. It's fun to get together and always chat about different things and outlooks of what's going on in the market, and your take on things and my take on things. And although they're so similar and they're so closely involved, there's different elements that are affecting your side of things and the rates, all that stuff. So it's fun. It's good to be able to talk through it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I only know a very surface level, idea of what goes on the lending side. So the reality is when people come to me for questions about the lending side and about how much they can afford and what's going to happen with rates and where the rates are at, I go to you. I go to Javier. I go to all the guys on your team that can help me out because you guys are the experts. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. Just like when I'm helping someone sell a house, I'm going to bring a professional photographer in and have them handle the photography. I stick to what I'm good at, and you guys kind of stick to what you're good at for the most part. And that's what makes us a really good team when we do get the opportunity to work together. So let's make this the shortest live ever. What exactly is going to happen in the market over the next 12 months, Danny?
Oh, dang. This might not be a short live. This might be a little bit longer. Man, if I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be standing right here. Here's what I will say. I think there's, as you've probably all heard, and the media is a little bit further behind what's actually happening in the market. But you've probably all heard by now, rates are on the rise. They've kind of come back to more realistic levels. Essentially, we're kind of pre-pandemic in a way. Everything that was baked into it to make sure that we kept interest rates low and that the economy floated through everything that happened, we're kind of right back in line with where we were before that, which we've been so spoiled with where things were the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Rates in the mid threes, low threes to even high threes is still so incredible, right? I mean, how many stories have we all heard? My parents being one, for example, they tell me that they assumed their previous interest rate of 14% because rates were 18% when they bought their home. I mean, still, even rates in the threes are absolutely incredible. One of the cool things that we have is with where inflation is right now, being able to borrow big amounts of money like this for cheaper than where inflation is, you're actually net positive on your money, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So interest rates are, they have come up a little bit. If you still have in your mind that you're waiting for the market to crash and prices to get lower, or you're waiting for the next rate dip, hate to be the bearer of bad news. I don't think that's going to happen, at least sometime in the near future. There may be some better interest rate options in 2-3 years from now, just based on some things that I've seen economically, and we can get into that a little later. But right now, if you're looking to get in the market, and then you can always take advantage if the opportunity presents itself to get in a better situation rate-wise.
Yeah, so you were talking, and this is something that I do not talk about or pull up enough. This is 30-year fixed mortgage rate historically, and obviously this isn't fully up to date because it only goes up to about 2018 or whatever that is on this graph. But this really gives you a good idea. I mean, in the 1980s, it peaked at around 18%. Even coming down to 4% was a really, really good rate. What was like the lowest that you were kind of seeing for a traditional or conventional mortgage over the last 2 years?
Through COVID, I mean, there was, in July of 2020, things peaked, and I mean, we were probably low, not low, I'd say mid twos on a 30-year fix with no points, not paying anything for that rate, and 2.375. It was crazy. You could pay a point and get a 30-year fixed at 1.99% for very small glimpses of where things were, you know. It's so funny though, if you bring that slide back up that you were just showing to tell
Yeah.
you a little bit of how long I've actually been in that. If you look right around the 2005 mark and where things kind of dipped just down into the 6% mark, I
Yeah.
remember helping my first client get into a home with a rate with a 6 in front of it, and I thought it was incredible. I was like, this is amazing, right? Like
This will never happen again.
Yeah, right. It was great. So yeah, it's been interesting looking and seeing where things, you know, have been and where they are now. Things are still absolutely incredible. But yeah, they're not the mid to low twos that they were roughly 2 years ago, year and a half ago.
So the Fed chairman announced that they were going to raise rates 3 times this year, but that hasn't happened yet, right? But we're starting to see interest rates go up. So what's the difference between those two numbers, and how do they affect one another?
Yeah, very good question. It's kind of a funny thing when the Fed talks about raising rates. The Federal Reserve is talking about the short-term rate, which is where banks lend money to each other, the Fed funds rate. So that is not directly correlated to mortgage-backed securities, which is what the trend of interest rate follows. There's some longer correlation through it depending on things happening economically when that happens. They are looking to hike those rates 3 to 4 times over this year, and that will cause an increase in interest rates as far as mortgage rates over the year, but it doesn't mean that when they hike that they hike it 1/4 to 0.5%, and interest rates move specifically 1/4 to 0.5%. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. So do you have any insight as to what you think or how much you think rates will go up?
Like I said a little bit ago, we're in the say mid threes. You know, you can be in the low threes, everybody, depending on what your situation is. And I can actually kind of show you where the average rate is being marketed right now. But the say mid threes right now, I think they've been pretty aggressive about making some of the adjustments they need to get back to par, basically. When they do those hikes, we might see 4% this year. We're probably going to see high threes. I don't know if we'll see 4, but we'll probably see high threes in there.
Is that kind of where we're at right now? Are you seeing like low to mid threes right now?
Seeing mid threes, I guess comparative to where things are, I could see another 3/8 to 0.5% in mortgage rates increase between now and the end of the year. Maybe about another 0.5 point or so is kind of what those 3 to 4 rate hikes mean to me when the Fed is talking about that.
So as far as like the average buyer out there, you know, the median home in San Diego, let's just say is 900,000. It's probably getting pretty close to 900,000 right now. Yeah. Increase like you're talking about, how much is that actually going to add onto a monthly mortgage if someone's putting 20% down? I can put you on the spot and have to pull all these numbers out of your butt, but I'm sure that you have a pretty good idea.
No worries. Yeah, it's good. If the difference of a 0.5 point in rate is probably going to mean $250 in that price range for that average price, maybe even closer to 300. So $200 to $300 a month. I mean, it makes a difference, right? To some people,
yeah.
It's
a couple $1,000s a year.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a difference in what people can qualify for, their comfort level. I mean, so many people, they make and they bring in a certain amount every single month, and their bills have to fall within that. If that rate increase changes that and it takes you out of your comfort level, that's a huge thing. When you pair that with rate increases on top of prices continuing to appreciate so competitively, like you and I have both seen in the market, I mean, it all signs point to being able to get in as soon as you possibly can. Pull the trigger on getting into a property if you can. If you're thinking of doing something, don't sit on the sidelines, because it's not going to get easier over the course of some of this stuff as this stuff unravels.
And do you think that there's a certain number that the rate would go up to where people would really stop buying and it would have a drastic effect on housing prices? I think when I was looking at the last year, or like at the beginning of this year, rates were generally around low threes. And the number that I kind of had in my mind is if it got into the fours, then that would really start to have a pretty drastic effect on the market and hopefully bring things around. But at the same time, if you're looking to buy a house and rates go up that much, you're gonna get screwed either way.
It's a chicken or the egg, right? It's it's an interesting dilemma to be in. It's funny. I was actually talking with a good friend of mine in the business who I really, really respect. And we were having a conversation earlier this morning. We were talking about interest rates. Personally, I think, we're forever, I don't want to say forever, but we are most likely for the foreseeable future, a low rate environment, just with the technology changes and things like that. That graph that you pulled up, I personally don't see that there's any way with the price of, inflation and the cost of living and wages that people are earning, we're not going to be able to see or afford to have rates in the 12, 10, even 6 or 8%. Honestly, I think rates will forever be below 6. But I do think there's going to be a sway. I think when we hit rates in the fours, it's going to really push some of those people who are waiting to sell their home. Because I think the biggest issue that we're all seeing right now is there's a lot of sellers that are wanting to sell their home, but they're scared of buying or being able to find a replacement property, right? Being able to find a home to buy. And I think when rates get into the fours, it's going to cause enough of the buyers to fall out of the market where there's a little bit of ease in it. And it's going to cause a couple of those sellers to be not be forced because they need to, but kind of, get off the ledge and make that decision to be able to do that, which it hopefully causes more of a right size direction in the market in some way.
Yeah, I agree with you. So it's not just potentially home prices coming down a little bit. It's the fact that there's less demand and there maybe is more available, more options that you can choose from. The clients I'm working with right now, it's week after week. It's like, Dan, there's just nothing. There's nothing that's popping up in the area. And it's not necessarily the price. Like they should be able to find what they're looking for in the price that they're looking at, but the inventory of what's available is just not there. I mean, I can pull up on my side. So I have, if you look at, this is inventory in San Diego County. So inventory from the last 5 years, I'll have it at 3 years. So if you look at the last 5 years, generally in San Diego, we're looking at around 7,000 homes for sale. Mm-hmm. In this last year, if you just put it down this last year, it started at over 4,000. It peaked at around 5,000. And then look at this. I mean, dropped to 2,000 homes available. There's 20,000 real estate agents in San Diego. And I think a lot of them are going hungry right now because, this is just crazy. And then again in January, around 2,000 homes. So what is kind of traditional for this time of year is, the amount of homes on the market are going to go down in December. They're going to stay down in January. Usually they start to rise a little bit you can see right here, January, February, March. And then March is usually when you start to see homes hitting the market. Last year was obviously a weird year with COVID and everything going on. So we would expect that homes or the amount of homes available are going to start to go up, but it's at such a low number right now. I mean, we need to see 2 times, 3 times, 4 times this amount just to get closer to a neutral market, let alone getting to a seller's market.
For sure. Totally. So I actually question for you on this exact point. What is to put you on the spot, what is your take on that? Because I agree. Typically we see a lot more movement. There's more homes that come into the market in the springtime, right? People want to, it's just the way that it is. Do you see that there are people that are getting ready to list and do that? Do we see that we're going to see some more inventory, or is it, what's the outlook from that side of things? What are you hearing on the streets? What does that look like? Yeah,
for a big part of it, I can only say anecdotally the amount of clients that I'm working with are going to be listing their home. And I definitely do. I have a listing coming live next week, but it's hard to say as far as the whole market, how that's affecting the whole market. what I can maybe to take one step back from that, I'd be curious to know on your thoughts, like how we got here of this really low inventory in this crazy, crazy market. I mean, literally, I thought a year ago today was the toughest buyer's market that I'll ever experience in San Diego. I genuinely thought that. I thought once we got out of this, it's never going to be this bad again because it was so tough.
Right.
And guess what? It's like, it's worse right now. It's worse because there's fewer homes available and people have money. Somehow they have money. But I really think probably one of the biggest catalysts for it is obviously the fact that there aren't a lot of homes for sale. And like you were saying, people that want to sell their home, then where do they go? They have to become a buyer. So they know the challenges on that side. But also just learning that the rates are going to go up, I think pushed a ton of people into the market saying, all right, rates are going to go up this year. Let's get in now while the rates are still good, because otherwise we're going to be screwed in 6 months. Do you think there's any possibility that that's what's part of what's going on right now?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's an element of that for sure. I think that it caused a lot of people to jump into action, which is a good thing. I think there's going to be like a seesaw, a teeter-totter, where it levels out at some point with the amount of cash that's actually, people are going to eventually run out of cash. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's happening right now is, yes, cash, meaning there's so many cash buyers, but also just people not working, right? Jobs reports. We see super bleak jobs report just came out today. And yes, it was based off of a time when we had Omicron fears and things like that. But there's so many jobs that are on the market, but people just aren't entering the workforce because they're still living off their cash. They don't need to. And when they run out of that cash, I think it's going to right size things and be able to correct it in a sense where it's going to have to start to function more like a normal market. Sellers are going to have to sell. Buyers are going to have to get more real. Sellers are going to have to get more realistic. Buyers are going to have to catch up to things. You know what I mean? It's going to cause something to be able to just kind of balance out in a way.
I think it's interesting because, like, yes, I agree with you to a certain extent, but at the same time, a lot of people that aren't going back to work right now are the hourly jobs and like the lower salary jobs. And the reality is, can you afford a home in San Diego making, even if you're making $20 an hour or if you're making $100,000 a year? I mean, yes, certainly there are places that you can buy, but it's going to be an attached property. It's going to be a smaller place unless you have a big down payment ready to go. The median homes around, I mean, it's going to be at $1 million before we know it. It's going to be at $1 million before we know it in San Diego. So, I think, and from my perspective, what I'm seeing is that we're getting people in from other areas, from other wealthy areas. They're utilizing equity in other homes. And that's a big chunk of the people that are moving to San Diego, people in the tech field, people that can work remote. And the reality is there's just not enough homes. There's not enough homes. I mean, we need another 350,000 homes by 2025 to catch up with demand. And we're building around 10,000 a year. That's nowhere near enough homes to get to where we need to get. So, I mean, yeah, I would like for things to get better, but I don't know how that's going to happen in this current situation.
For sure. I'd like them to get better too. You bring up a very good point, and you are accurate. I think I was thinking more, kind of talking more about more of a national level rather than a micro of
for sure.
Specifically. I think that's going to happen from a macro level more than a micro level. I agree with you. And I think that's actually something that I've told people for a really, really long time. I mean, when 2008 happened, builders didn't have access to money, right? They couldn't borrow money. And we literally stopped building homes almost altogether until, say, 2015 or 2016. So people always talk about real estate being a cycle, right? And a cycle is 7 to 10 years. And I've helped people kind of look at this or kind of understand this a little bit. If they say 7 to 10 years and 2008 was the low, you're actually stacking multiple cycles on top of each other because it didn't get back to a normal beginning of a cycle until people could start functioning the way they used to function, which was 2015, 2016. Then we started to build homes, but it's almost like a slingshot. Now we've had all of this happen over time with no homes being built. Now we're trying to catch up to it, and we can't ever catch up. In a market like San Diego, you are spot on. The hourly, as unfortunate as it is, and it's horribly because I love to be an advocate for. I love helping first-time home buyers, but I love helping anybody get into a home, and I think everybody deserves the ability to be able to own their home and own their own real estate. It's really, really difficult in San Diego for some of those lower end wage earners to be able to do so. And it is tough in a way. That's kind of what's insulated us from things in the past, and why San Diego is so great, because we have such incredible things like you talked about, the tech sector here. We have an incredible, the school system, the healthcare system, the military is a huge piece here. There's so many things that insulate us. And then you pair that with being on the West Coast. We can't build any further west. We can't build any further south. We're right here. It's insulated us and keeps our values higher than most areas.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, there's some opportunity in the south end of San Diego for new construction. There's a ton of room in Chula Vista still. There's still plenty of room in North San Diego, in Escondido, San Marcos, Valley Center. But it's starting to get pretty far out. And then one of the other solutions that they're having is things like SB9, where they're talking about for all of California, making it possible to build up to 4 units on just about every single property. Basically, unless it's restricted from the HOA, or I believe I've heard of some cities trying to combat this as well. But it's still a new thing, so it's hard to figure out how it's all going to work. But as far as like the people that you're working with, because on a daily basis, you as a lender are working with more clients than myself as a realtor. So it's nice to get your perspective. Like, are you seeing kind of the same thing as far as the people that you're working with? Are they like I get this question all the time. How can people afford homes in San Diego? And, I go back to thinking about thinking as when I was younger, if I can make $150,000 a year, then life would be good. I could afford whatever I wanted to do. I could do great things. I could have a family. My wife wouldn't have to work. And, the unfortunate truth is that's not enough to cut it if you really want a move-in ready single family home in San Diego. So who are the people that you're working with? Who are these people that can afford homes in San Diego right now?
Yeah. A lot of them are industry professionals. I mean, they're professionals in their field. We are seeing a lot of nurses and doctors. We've had a lot of that recently, but I agree with you. There is a lot moving in from other areas due to the tech sector and some of those different things happening. So we're seeing people, and they are wage earners that are, a family household, and you've got a collective, $250,000 or so between the husband and wife or the duo. And I think we're seeing a lot of people that are doing that. It is funny to think through some of those things of what your thought was previously with, like making $150,000 a year. I used to always say when I was little, I grew up in Salt Lake City, I would look up on the hill, and it was like the nice homes were up on the hill, right? And I would look at it and I would go, man, one of these days I'm going to live in $1 million home. And never did I realize that it was going to be like a tiny little house, right? It's just, or how that would be a small little house. It's crazy. It's interesting how much that's changed. But it is, the people who are buying homes right now are, they're professionals in their field. They're graduates that are making good, solid salaries. We're occasionally seeing some people that have done really good in the stock market, but most of them are very good wage earners they have a good specialty in their field, and they make great money doing so.
The other thing I just always get into is like, if you're just getting started and you want to get your foot in the door, then get your foot in the door. Buy something that's an attached property, build some equity, start to build, pay down that mortgage. As long as you can afford living in the house long-term, then it should be a good investment for you. People ask me all the time, what are the areas in San Diego that are going to appreciate the highest? Like where is a good investment for my money along with actually buying a house to live in? And the reality is, sure, there are some areas that will appreciate higher than others. But pretty much anywhere in San Diego is a good bet because of how low the inventory is. Danny, do you know this guy here, Corey?
I do. I do.
So he's saying
Dual
dual
income.
income. Yeah, I mean that's a lot of people I'm working with dual income for sure. And thanks
For
everyone
sure.
writing in these comments. I have to pull this up, and I'm going to say I don't really have an answer for it. This is Jason Lopez. He's my broker at Real Broker, and he said open up InfoSparks, which is what I was showing earlier about inventory, and put it out for 10 years. So you can actually see, and I'm going to have to go back and research and see what the heck's going on here, because now I'm a little bit, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. But this is basically showing where we're at now, inventory wise, is where we were at before 2013. So that's pretty crazy. I don't know. I'm gonna have to do a little more
That's when
research
there
on
were
where this
no
is.
homes being built on the time, right? And everybody, it was a weird, interesting time. Yeah.
I mean, I would have thought that inventory would have started to increase around 2011, but yeah, I'm gonna have to do some more research. Maybe this is a glitch in the system. I call it a glitch in the system. So thanks for bringing this up, Jason. I really appreciate that. So he's
That
saying
is
maybe
interesting. That's
this
really
is
good.
a new normal, which is an interesting way to think about things for sure.
It is, and
If
I don't disagree with that. I don't think we'll necessarily. It's funny. People always talk about basing things off of what happened in history, and it's great because it's a good gauge of different things. But as everything has changed, there's so we can't base anything off because of technology, because of this now post-COVID world that we're in, all those different things. We don't know what this new normal is, right? I agree. We may forever only see 4 to 5,000 homes
yeah,
versus an 8 to 10 plus. It's a very good outlook, Jason. Good call.
it is pretty wild to look at this graph, how perfectly it's come back down to where it is over here in 2013. Anyway, more info to come. I promise you guys. I'm going to research what's going on here because I'm very curious to make more sense of this. Talking about how to afford a house here. So you have Corey saying lots of gifts from family too, and I've seen that. So if we're talking down payment, and you're going to need, it depends. There's a lot we can go into with down payment, but if you're going to need $100,000, $200,000, sometimes we are seeing people getting a gift from family, and they could be pulling it from different things. Real quick, so what Danny, as far as getting gifts from family for down payment, how easy is it to do that?
It's actually very easy from our side of things. It's very, very easy to receive a gift, and if you know that that's going to happen, reach out to your mortgage advisor and have the conversation. Let them know the down payment's coming from a gift. Most good mortgage advisors are going to ask you where that's coming from. Make sure that they know it, because there's a very easy way we can do it. There's two ways that it can happen. Either way, it's not like pulling teeth. But if we know of that and we get ahead of it, we can make it a very simple process, and just make sure that it's very streamlined for everyone involved, your parents included, all the different things. There are certain things, and that's one of the biggest things, basically since 9/11, when the Patriot Act came out. And that's one of the things that I always prep our clients about, is one of the biggest thorns in our side of this whole process is probably going to have to be sourcing income or sourcing documentation and assets that are going to be used for the purchase of a home. We don't dictate what we have to show. It is very clear cut through the Patriot Act. We have to have 2 months of bank statements to show this money. If it's coming from somewhere else, we have to see it. If it came into that account a month and a half ago, we have to see it in that other account. We have to source that money and make sure that it's not coming in from an outside entity to harm someone. It's not something that we want to discriminate against somebody and make sure that you earned this money. It's just the way that it is. Our world changed in 2011 or 2001 with 9/11. Our world changed in 2020 with COVID. There's going to be things that always, instill these new normals and instill these new pieces that we have to adapt into our situation, for sure.
Yep. And one more, I love all these, everyone writing in for all the ways that you can afford a house here in San
Very
Diego.
true. Very,
Brian
very
Blake
true.
says 3 roommates when you're paying your mortgage. And I have to say, Brian, who I've actually lived at his house before. We rented out his house before when he bought it in Bankers Hill. Wonderful, wonderful spot back in the day. But yeah, when I bought my first house, we had a roommate for a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
So it alleviated some of the pressure of having that high mortgage payment, what we perceived to be a very high mortgage payment when we first moved in. The reality is we were able to save all that money and put it into installing HVAC and installing AC at our house, which was fantastic. But yeah, if you want to be a homeowner, there are ways that you can go to get creative. You might have to get a little bit smaller. You might have to have an attached property. You might have to get a roommate for a little while. But these are options that you can have, again, to get your foot in the door while you're still building up your, how much you're making, and depending on what your situation is.
Agreed. Could not agree more. And I think I talk with so many people about that every single week, that just getting into a place. I know you want to be by the beach, but renting by the beach until you save enough money to buy by the beach is never going to happen.
Yeah.
Buy somewhere where you can afford, build equity, and that equity will help you eventually buy that place that you want by the beach, right?
Yep.
You just have to make that move. You have to get into it. And I've seen this time and time again with personal friends of ours, clients that we've dealt with together, that they make that leap. And then once they do it, they realize the benefit, and they've seen the incredible equity that they've grown and built. And it's truly life-changing. Real estate, and that's one of the reasons why I truly do what I do, and I'm so passionate about it, is I genuinely believe that the path to financial freedom in this country is through owning real estate.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the reality is the prices will come down one day. We're not going to sit here and say that they're never going to go down, but over the long term, these are long-term investments. You have an opportunity to build wealth. And talking about, well, we're going to get in this one second. You're welcome, Brian. Absolutely. You are very, very welcome. But talking about building wealth, there are some different things that are happening right now in the on the financial side that are going to affect people that are trying to build wealth. So you have a first home, and then you can potentially buy a second home and get really good rates to be able to buy a second home and be able to rent it out as an Airbnb. But there's some changes happening, and I know because I'm going through the process of buying an investment property right now, and you just told me about this. So what is happening there?
Yes. There's definitely changes with second homes, with investment properties, even with condos. Basically, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have kind of come out, and they've basically said, like, our goal is to make sure that we are helping people purchase properties for the purpose of a primary residence. Mm-hmm. The condo situation, it's a unique thing. This is something that you as realtors, all of us as lenders, you as realtors, we've never had to deal with some of these different things that are coming into the market right now, because the guidelines changed. I don't know if you guys remember or heard of that horrific situation in Florida where that condo building collapsed.
Yeah.
And multiple deaths. And it was a very unfortunate situation. When that happened,
completely avoidable.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac came out and they said, we want to make sure that this doesn't happen, that we're lending on communities that aren't suitably fit to be lived in, right? That we're going to set our homeowners up for this again. So there's some things that came into place. They're essentially effective. The latest they're going to be effective is April 1st, but it all depends on how you put things into play in the secondary market, all that kind of stuff. They're now going live, where you're starting to see these questions that we ask of HOA associations, different questions that they've never had to answer before. And sometimes they're going, we don't know the answer to this. We've never been asked that. And we go, we know, but we're required to ask it now. And we're seeing them get different advice from their attorneys and different things, right? So that piece, the condo thing, for what it's worth, it's absolutely there to protect the buyer who's buying a condo or buying something in an association. As far as a second home or an investment property, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac basically kind of said, hey, we're going to make sure that if you're buying a second home or an investment property, you can do that through us, but you're going to pay a considerably higher rate because of it. They're making a stand that they want to be and keep funds available for people buying primary residences. And they know and understand that second homes, we've seen a lot happen in the market. Somebody says a second home, and technically you only need to be there 2 weeks out of the year, but a lot of people do short-term rentals out of it. And they're kind of saying, hey, you know what? Second homes and investment properties, rather than second homes being more like a primary residence, they've kind of shifted that and said second home is actually a lot more like an investment property. We're going to stick it more in that category. And who knows? Who knows what's going to happen in, a few years from now. Personally, I see this initial shift of things. I think that we are going to see other investors come out with unique products specifically for second homes and investment properties, but they haven't come out yet. They started to develop them during COVID when there were some changes happening with second homes, and then they kind of went away, but they're going to start to come back now. Things are always changing. Things, options, all of those things are always changing for us. But yeah, it's definitely a different world for second homes, for investment properties. Short-term Airbnbs, and this is one thing that a lot of people ask questions about, is their intention is to short-term rent it, and you can get $3,000 a month in a short-term rental, but we can't calculate or use $3,000 a month for helping you qualify if you're buying an investment property. We can only take into account what a long-term renter would pay, and that might only be $1,500, right? There's a significant difference in the ability to qualify for an investment property based on how we have to calculate the income we can count versus what you may be able to actually make from the property.
I feel like you could just talk about this stuff all day long. I love it.
I don't know if people think it's exciting as I do, but I love
the stuff for sure. Okay. So let's see what else we have here. All right. So how is that kind of stuff? Is that going to affect the market going forward? It doesn't really sound like it's going to have that much of an effect on the market, especially if other programs come out that are comparable with interest rates and things like that.
I mean, I think potentially it'll have an initial effect. I think we've seen a lot of people in this time, people that would have done really good financially, whether it be the rebound of the market or cryptocurrency or whatever the case may be, or just, been able to put some cash away, save some cash in this market, that they've wanted to buy a second home because they could, or an investment property. And it might sway them not to do so at this time, which would allow it to be opened up for primary residences, which could provide a little bit of relief in the market, which is great.
Sure. All right, let's answer some questions here. All right, Danny, what's the property tax now in San Diego?
Ooh, good question. So a general rule of thumb that we always go off of, and we can dive into any specific property and really get very, very accurate, but a general rule is 1.25% of the purchase price. A very easy way to calculate this, I always tell my borrowers, is whatever home price you're looking at, say you're looking at an $800,000 home, if you just drop the last 3 zeros, you can count on property taxes being about $800 a month. That's going to get you within 10 or 20 bucks of what your actual payment is. So if you're looking at a $1.1 million home, you're going to look at taxes being about $1,100 a month. I know that sounds, and that may be scary to some people, because when you look on calculators online like Zillow or Redfin, they're looking at data that's available to them that they can pull from county records. They're basing that off of prior owners' tax rate. Here in California, the tax rate changes when ownership is changed. So 1.25% is what you should actually go off of. If you're looking to calculate stuff, kind of use that factor. Don't go off of one of those calculators, because you'll be very surprised at the end.
Oh, that's very good. Some very good tips there. 1.25 I think is a really good rate to go off of. It definitely can be lower. I haven't seen it really much higher than that, but I think that's probably a good number to go off of.
There's certain areas in Chula Vista, there's certain areas with Mello-Roos tax.
Especially when that comes in, yeah.
When you have Mello-Roos in certain areas, that can be a little bit higher. Typically, 1.25 is a safe estimate. We'll see anywhere in San Diego from 1.08 to 1.25%.
Yeah. And Brian asks, is the Great California Exodus a myth? And yes, there's a lot of headlines about that. So the from what I remember, it wasn't 2021. I think it was 2020, right? Was the first year that we recorded a net loss in the population in California. Correct. So that was the headline. They made a big, it was headline everywhere. The reality was it was a very small portion of the population. And then specifically, if you're looking at where the people are leaving, It's a lot of the big cities. It's LA, it's San Francisco. If you're looking at, I know there was a survey done by USD last year, and they surveyed people in a lot of the major cities throughout California, and they did it again like a couple of years prior. And what they actually found was that the amount of people in San Diego that said that they were going to leave or had intention to leave San Diego over the course of the next year actually went down over the last couple of years. So there's fewer people with intention to leave San Diego. Now, trying to find statistics on how many people have left San Diego, it's kind of hard to get through all that information. But yeah, I know San Francisco and LA, they've definitely seen people leaving. San Diego, it's still really hot. And the reality is we're seeing people coming from LA and San Francisco to come down here to San Diego because they can work remote because of the weather. And we're getting people from all other major cities doing that as well. So that's kind of from my perspective, what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I would agree with you very much. And I think this goes back to a previous conversation we were having. The people who are leaving California, especially areas like San Diego, LA, San Francisco, but specifically here in San Diego, from what I'm seeing, people that are leaving are those entry wage earner jobs that don't have the ability to ever necessarily qualify to buy a home here in San Diego anyways. And that's unfortunate, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily affect our real estate market, right? What I'm personally seeing, you and I have had multiple clients that have done this, whether it be from the East Coast, whether it be from San Francisco, multiple people moving to San Diego because you can now work remote. The positive that COVID changed with all of us is so many different jobs, and we've realized what we can actually accomplish and do being able to be remote. And people have realized that San Diego's incredible on so many different aspects of things. A lot of what we've talked about, I mean, the climate here, I went to lunch with a friend in the business who's from Salt Lake City, and I was cold at lunch and he was in short sleeves and he was like, man, this is beautiful for me, right? In January, it's gorgeous here. It's incredible. All different aspects of what San Diego is. People want to be here, and it's bringing people here that are good wage earners, good positive assets to the economy and to the growth of what we have here in store.
Yeah, there is a lot that I love about that for sure. And one thing I always go back to as well is if you look at San Diego, the city of San Diego, and all of the cities within San Diego County, none of them are top 10 most expensive cities in California. And obviously we have the Bay Area, obviously we have LA, and we have Hollywood, but I sincerely think over the next 5-10 years, we're going to see San Diego and maybe some of the other cities, Rancho Santa Fe, Coronado, some of those places are going to start creeping up on that top 10 list because why not? I mean, San Diego is a great place to be, and we're seeing people with a lot of money come to San Diego. And we're seeing prices in San Diego go up at a higher rate than a lot of other areas around the U.S. So it's really interesting to take a look at what's happening.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that for a long time, we were almost considered like the baby brother of San Francisco and LA, and people are starting to realize the little secret that we had here.
Yeah.
And in no time, I think we'll be right on par with what's happening there as far as values and prices, all that kind of stuff.
And a lot of the tech companies are starting to come down here as well. So yeah, Silicon Beach, anybody? I hate that term, but I read it the other day. That was hilarious. Danny, 12 Miles wants to know, first of all, how are you?
I'm amazing. Thank you.
That's very good to know. And what percentage do you think, or do you see or predict the 30-year housing mortgage interest rates will peak at in the next 5 years?
Ooh, good question. So once again, I don't have my crystal ball with me. I'd be on a beach.
This graph do you have the interest rates?
That'd be awesome. Yeah, let's pull that up.
Okay.
So this is a good indicator, and I talk with my clients about this a lot. I send this to clients when they're looking at buying a home, just to show them an idea. Essentially what this is showing you, this is a system called Optimal Blue. This is some origination software that roughly 35% of all lenders use this software to lock their loans. So that is literally tens of thousands of lenders across the country. This specific page shows you the average par rate being advertised by lenders using their software every single day. So this is showing you the 30-year conforming rate, the average par rate for a 30-year conforming loan is 3.792%. The 15-year loan is 2.961, right? I know we all get things in the mail that say that interest rates are, 2.5%. Please read the fine print on those, flip them over, look and realize that it's talking about a $350,000 mortgage on a $600,000 house, none of which you can actually get here in San Diego. And it's based off of paying 2 to 3 points in fee, right? So,
and it's a 15-year mortgage.
And a 15-year mortgage. Exactly. Yeah. So all of those different things, when you look at that, this is actually what's happening. This is the real rate. And that's why I bring this up and I talk with so many of my clients about it. Because if you are making your decision of who to work with as a lender based off of what interest rate they tell you today, you are going to lose. The reason why is because anybody can tell you whatever rate they want right now. You can't lock an interest rate until you're actually, the interest rate isn't associated with your loan profile. The interest rate is associated with the collateral, the specific home that it is guaranteeing, right? So we can't lock a rate until you're actually under contract. So in that situation, getting in a situation and having somebody say, oh yeah, interest rates are, 2.99% today. They can say whatever they want to. And if that sways you to work with them, you're going to be in a world of hurt when you actually get under contract. So I always base things off of the average rate of what's actually happening in the market right now when we're talking about things. And I send this link to all of my buyers so that they can see the trends in what's happening in the market too, so they can base their own calculations of things. As far as what's happening in the next 5 years, I touched on this briefly earlier. I see that we will be in a forever low rate environment. What does that mean? Just due to wages and inflation and all of the different indicators that I see, I don't personally see that we're going to go above 6% anytime in the foreseeable future. Personally, I actually, and this is, I'm gonna throw one out there. I don't know if I'm gonna hit it or not. I personally think that the Fed is going to get pretty aggressive on making some of these moves, and I think that come 2023 or 2024. We're actually going to see a pretty good opportunity to refinance again. Just based off of
my black book, so we can have it later. You're right. I'm going to write it down in my black book.
We'll make a bet. Well, let's make a friendly bet about it. Let's do it.
Well, you're my go-to, so I'm not betting against that. Whatever happen, I believe you, Danny. I've worked with you.
Right. Good. So I don't think that rates are going to get crazy out of control. They're still, when you look at where things have been, they're going to stay relatively low. We're still technically considered in historically low rates, right? But yeah, I personally see rates. We might touch 4% by the end of this year. We may creep into the 5s at some point in the next 5 years or so. But there also might be another dip, just the way that things need to react to be able to get back down into the 2s.
Yeah. All right. So a very good question that goes along with this. So Sam Joshua is buying a new build that's going to be completed October, November timeframe. Do you think they should lock the interest rates as they are predicting to increase over the year?
Very good question. If you're working, so sometimes when you're buying a new construction home, if you're working with a builder that gives you the ability to lock that rate. I mean, right now, I feel like we've kind of reached where we are. If it's in October, November, I don't think it's going to be drastically different than where we are now. I think locking now might be a little too early because there's a cost associated with it. So all rate locks are based on a finite amount of time, right? So the longer period that you lock an interest rate, the more expensive it is. You're paying it one way or another. You're either paying it through the rate that you're locking. So for example, let's say interest rates are 3.5%. Well, if you're locking a rate for 6 months, if you already have a property identified like this situation, you could lock a rate for 6 months, but they'd probably lock a rate of 3.75% or have a large fee associated with locking that. Sometimes builders have incentives and builders preferred lenders have incentives in situations like that where they allow you to lock an interest rate. I would say that would be something to look into as it gets a little bit closer. The thing based off of this time frame, if it's going to be completed in October, November, that's still a pretty long way out. And there's a lot of things more than rates. There's a lot of things in the supply chain that might change that actual finish date. Because we've seen that with a lot of clients that have bought homes, and we actually just helped a lady get into her home. I'm so glad she finally closed a couple days ago. She was under contract, and it was originally supposed to be done and completed in October, and she just got into her home now. So there's definitely different things that are happening. Yes, as it gets closer, and if that opportunity is presented to you, look at it and see. If you have any more questions about it, just even to bounce ideas, reach out to me, ping me. Let's discuss, not necessarily that I have to be your lender, but just to kind of see what's going on in the market. I'd say it's probably too early to do it now.
So, Sam, Joshua, I'm going to just recap that real quick. Danny guarantees that you should wait because it's going to get better. And if he is wrong, you can send him an angry email at danny@drysdaleteam.com and harass him all you want.
There you go. There you go. Perfect. Thanks, Dan.
All right, don't worry. I'll get the hard question after this one. I'll start with that. How's that sound?
Okay,
all right. So, do you think housing prices are going to go down in 3 years from now? What I do believe is that predicting the market 3 years from now is damn near impossible. There's so many. If the last year and a half, 2 years taught us anything, it's to expect the unexpected. Absolutely anything can happen. So many different things can happen with the economy in the next 3 years. So I think trying to predict what's going to happen it's not going to happen. Now, what I will say is we're at this situation where housing prices have gone up since 2011. So like 11 years now. Is that when they started going up? 2011? That sounds right to me. So,
roughly, yeah.
So housing prices have been going up since then, which is a crazy long time for housing prices to go up. We could get into all the reasons why they went for that long. They obviously started at a really low price at that point because we had this market crash. So a lot of people say that the market needs to change just because it's been so long. Now, of course, like we were saying before, there's got to be a time where prices start to come back down. It can't forever be a seller's market until the end of time. Like there has to be some dips. That's a natural market, goes up and down, but goes up, just like this, like a little wave. But the question is, what is going to be the catalyst, and how far are we from a catalyst? And if we're looking at national prices versus a local market here in San Diego, there could be a big difference there too. So my gut is telling me, from everything that I've researched, all the people I've talked to, everything that I believe would make me say that 3 years from now, housing prices are going to be more expensive than they are today. That's what I believe. I think that we will certainly in the next 3 years see a time where prices start to come down a little bit, but they might go up another. I mean, the last year and a half, they've gone up 30%. So they could go up another 25% to come down 10. And so if you're trying to time the market, obviously that's not a good strategy. I mean, it's never a good strategy, whether it's any type of investments. If you're looking at stocks, if you're looking at real estate, trying to time a market is never a good idea. But if you're in a situation where you can take advantage of opportunities when they do start to come down, that's fantastic. That's what you should do. What do you think, Danny? 3 years from now?
A lot. I think the analogy of driving a car down the road always comes to mind when I think of something like this or when I answer something like this. I think the appreciation rate is going to slow. It has to slow. We're not going to see 20, 30% appreciation year over year over year. It's just not possible. But just because the appreciation rate slows doesn't mean you're driving 50 miles an hour and all of a sudden you put it in reverse, right? You might go 50 miles an hour and then you slow down to 40. Or maybe you slow down to 10, but you're still moving forward. I agree with you. I personally don't see that home prices are going down in 3 years from now. I don't see that home prices will appreciate as much as they're appreciating year over year at this point 3 years from now. But I still think home prices 3 years from now are going to be higher than they are today.
Yeah. Well said. I like that. All right, 12 Mile says he's hoping to find a decent 3 to 4 bedroom house in the La Mesa area around 600 to 700,000 by late, and he corrected himself later on, 2022 to 2023. I'm sorry I said he. I don't know, he, she, whoever this is. I apologize if I got that incorrectly. So if you're looking at, and this kind of goes along with the last question that we just got, If you're looking and hoping that prices are going to come down by late 2023, I don't think that they will. And I don't think that it's something that you can bank off of. Now, who knows? Like I was saying, a lot can happen in the next year and a half, 2 years for that to potentially happen. I can say right now, if you're looking for a move-in ready single family home, 3 to 4 bedroom for 600 to 700,000, is really tough right now. 3 bedroom, in the 700s, you could probably find it. It's probably going to need a little bit of work. An attached property, a townhouse, a condo, you might be able to find those, although there's just not a ton of inventory of those right now, but you can definitely find those within that range. Or you just might have to look into a different area. So it depends on what your flexibility is, depends on your exact needs and wants. But yeah, I'm rooting for you. I would like to see home prices get back down to around that price, but I think that we are past that now, and pretty unlikely that we're going to get back down to that price within the next 2 years or next year.
I second everything you said, because this is your area of expertise. Like you said, I stay in my lane. This is 100% yours. And I like to follow your advice when it comes to that kind of stuff. One thing that I always think about when we're talking about home prices is the value of a dollar bill. Right. So one thing that I think about is, we're in 2022. Think 30 years ago. Think in 1992. If I show you $100 bill, it's still $100 in 1992. It just got you a hell of a lot more than it gets you today. Right. That's one thing. The prices are more expensive, but the money doesn't go as far as it used to. So we still have in our mind, we're downloaded with, the cost that $1 million is, and it is a ton of money. 600,000 is a ton of money, but it's not $600,000 today is not what $600,000 was, 30 years ago, or honestly, even pre-COVID, with some of the inflation and so many dollars entering the economy. It's a different world. But yes, I would love to be able to see some of those homes be there. I don't know how possible that is. If you find one of those, Dan, let me know.
Sounds good, man.
Let 12 right first, and then if he doesn't want it, let me know.
So, all right, let's get some. If we have any other questions come in, we will gladly answer that for you. But before we do that, let's just finish this conversation off. So, Danny, looking at 2022, we're still at the start of 2022. What do you believe we are going to see as far as supply and demand of homes here in San Diego? How's it going to flow throughout the year?
I think supply and demand is going to be demand is going to be very, very tough. And I think we're going to have very little supply throughout the course of this year. I think we're going to still see some pretty strong appreciation just from what I've seen in this month of this year that's already happened. I think we're potentially going to see double-digit appreciation in San Diego this year again. I know a lot of the economic indicators say somewhere between 5 to 8%. That'd be awesome, because it would actually cause some of the ease that we are looking for. But I think it's going to be more in the double digits again. I think it's going to be a very tight market. I hope that we see some ease towards the end of it, for sure, with the rise of rates and people, running out of cash, so to speak, some of those different things that happen.
Yeah, I'm going to be very interested to see what all the data comes back for January this year, because I know how tough the market has been. It's just been brutal this year for buyers. And I think that, we definitely saw at least a couple percentage points of where the median home went up this last month. And I think that is going to continue throughout the year. But at the same time, I think because it got so crazy in January, that I think we're going to see it start to mellow out quicker than I had originally thought this year. So I'm thinking when we start to see more inventory for the summer, I'm starting to become a little bit more hopeful that we might get a little bit closer to a balanced market. It's still going to be a seller's market, but it's going to be a little bit closer to a neutral market. And my hope is that we'll see that starting around June of this year, June of this year. And then it'll just kind of taper off throughout the end of the year. That's what I would hope to see. But again, I mean, with all the supply chain issues, with Omicron and who knows what's next, with interest rates rising, with home prices getting so incredibly high, I mean, it's just so hard to tell, but it's going to be an interesting year. That's for sure.
Well, for sure. Very well said, sir.
Awesome. We got one more question here. Sam Joshua, houses with Mello-Roos harder to sell later. For our home, we are planning to buy with Mello-Roos, and property tax comes to 1.46%. As far as harder to sell, I mean, definitely it's another thing that people have in their mind when they're considering buying a house, and another thing that they have to be able to afford. So of course it's going to have some effect, but just like you being a buyer for that house, you're adding that into what you're going to have to pay. And the reality is people have to pay something extra for a new construction home. I think you said that I believe you said you were in Chula Vista. Oh no, you didn't say. If it's down in Chula Vista or the areas that have new construction right now, a lot of them, those areas you can get way more affordability, and you just can't find new homes like that at that price anywhere else in San Diego. Oh, Three Roots. Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Super cool.
Yeah, very cool. So no, I don't think that's going to negatively affect you because that's so centrally located. I'm really excited to see how that community turns out. I think that because it's so centrally located, because it's new construction, and there's such a limited supply of new construction in San Diego, that you're going to be totally fine. You're going to be totally fine if you need to sell that down the road.
One thing that I would add with Mello-Roos is added for a finite amount of time. There is a specific value associated with it. And yes, it's built into your property taxes, but it can be paid off early. So depending on how long you plan to be in that property and when you plan to sell, I mean, maybe you've paid such a big portion of it off by that time that the seller comes in and they just choose to pay that out entirely. And then they're free and clear of all of that. And then they're just on the base tax rate. So, yeah, a couple of different things to think about. I don't think Mello-Roos necessarily makes it harder. It might change the qualifying factors of somebody looking in certain communities, because if they're looking at a community with 1.25% and their price range and they're qualified up to say X, they would not be able to qualify for that there, right? So there's certain things that come into play there. I don't think it would be something that's going to make it harder to sell in the future necessarily.
From my understanding, I think it's around 20 years is like the baseline for Mello-Roos. A lot of them are like 20 to 25 years is how long that they will last. And I think it's not necessarily from when your specific home was constructed, but when the whole, if it's a master plan community, when it was all approved or something, or when they broke ground or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot to think about there. I think it's similar to like if you have solar on your house and you're leasing the solar, that can technically be a negative because it's going to be a little bit harder to finance that loan. If you're pre-approved up to 800,000, the home is 800,000, and then there's a lease on the solar, that can affect like your pre-approval and what you can actually afford. But at the same time, you have solar, so it's going to positively impact the buyer. So it's kind of similar with Mello-Roos because it's actually doing something. It's building up the community. It's making it a better place to live. So there's a lot of added benefits to that as well. Yes, it's more money out of pocket, but it's giving them more value at the same time.
For sure. Absolutely.
Okay. And Andrea said, quick question. So we'll do one more if Danny's got time. Opinions on Lennar and Otay Ranch and how people have to bid without knowing what other people are bidding. Do you know what those are running for? LOL. Danny, are you familiar with Lennar and what they're doing with all their...
Oh, yeah. Yes. I'm going to let you answer this question. This is definitely in your court. But I've heard, yes, I'm very familiar with what Lennar is doing. It's crazy, but you can do anything in this market. You can do what? Yeah.
So basically what she's saying here is typically with new construction, there's a set price that you pay that price, you get that home for that price. Now, obviously we've seen a tremendous amount of demand and a very low supply. So a lot of these builders have had to get a little bit creative, for Three Roots specifically that San Joshua was just talking about. They had I think 100 homes they were building last year, and they had a wait list of 16,000 people that applied for their communities. So it's really hard for these builders. What do? They either just have really long wait lists, or they do something like what Lennar is doing. And there are a couple other builders are doing it as well, but they're the ones that, as far as I know, started to do it first. and they're definitely the most well known for doing it, is they're just bidding up the price just like you're buying a resale home. So they'll say, all right, there's 50 people in the room, or this e-room, or the Zoom call, and you each have an opportunity to get one of these 8 properties and give us your highest and best price. This is what price it starts at. Give us your highest and best price, and maybe you'll get a chance to buy this home. So it feels, for a lot of buyers, it can feel a little bit, slimy, but at the same time, that's what's happening in the resale market. And that's what anyone that's selling their house, they want to get as much profit as they can possible for it. Lennar does other things as well, and I can't get too much into my personal opinions about them, but I can tell you, if you look at their reviews online versus other builders here in San Diego, you'll be interested at what you can find. From personal experiences from my clients that have gone through Lennar, a lot of them have had challenges and issues and things like that, as far as the service and the quality of construction type of thing. But yeah, it's very interesting what Lennar's got going on. I don't have any insight as far as what you can do, because on the other side of this too is they've kind of made it so that they don't really have an opportunity to work with real estate agents. They've eliminated any broker compensation or something like that. So to have like a neutral third party in your corner advising you on what to do is just not really there. You basically just have to go through their people as far as their new construction is concerned. So yeah, challenging times for them. Cool.
Crazy.
Well, thank you everybody who we'll get rid of this. Thank you everybody who tuned in today. Danny's information is on the information of every single one of my videos. Just look at the information of my videos. He is the lender. Then him and his team are the lenders that I work with the most frequently in San Diego. And I can tell you, I've worked with a lot of bad lenders in my day. And, about 50% of the people I work with, they want to work with a lender that they have a relationship with. And then about 50% of the time in those scenarios, the lender ends up being really challenging to work with. And my clients end up telling me halfway through the transaction that they wish they went with someone different. I've never had that experience in his team. Absolutely the best. Their service is top notch. Their rates are really good. And it really, really is a pleasure to work with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you. That's it's incredible to hear. I love the way that we've set up our team, and honestly, it's my team that does it all. They're the magic behind the scenes that makes it all happen. We feel the same way about you and your team that you have. It's incredible to be able to see, because I think it's in a market like this where things get squished, it's easier to see the good and bad lenders and realtors there. And hopefully, as the market is tough, it creates a cleansing where you only have good, positive people to work with. You, I can honestly say, are one of my favorite to be able to work with, and are one of the most incredible realtors that I know. I'm happy to be associated with you, sir.
You say that on every YouTube live you go on, don't you? This is his first YouTube live, as far as I know, but I appreciate the love, Dan. It's a pleasure. And Deb, tune in late, but always enjoy my videos. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And I will be back with another video and another live next. Thanks, Danny. Hi.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
There goes my video for some reason. Perfect timing.